What's good, my boy? Figured I'd come on here and make a little bit of a video. Uh, Today I'm going to talk about this point of you can call it many different things. You can call it awakening, you can call it enlightenment, you can call it escaping the matrix, you can call it becoming aware, uh, waking up. Any of these terms, they're all kind of cringe. It doesn't really matter. The point is, I think the one I'll go for in this video is awareness, but it's this point where you start to reject what you were taught. You start to reject a narrative. Now, a lot of people, depending on the audience that this finds, might be aware of this, might not, but everybody does this to an extent. Now, we're going to get a little bit into the nitty gritty. I'm going to try to keep this brief and short, but everybody does this to an extent. When you, whether you're like an angsty teenager and you start to reject the teachings and you become like radically into some sort of little niche clique type thing, you see certain movements throughout the last 100 years, the punk rock movement, the grunge movement, all sorts of different things, the feminist movement, the love movement of the 60s. You see nowadays lots of radical movements online. There's not as many uh, real world movements that people are in except for like riots and stuff like that. I guess you could see the ICE situation that just happened. A lot of people are really vocal about Israel and Palestine and the wars, all these different things. You can even see these sort of things. People becoming interested in something outside of just their ordinary lives, really. But all of these things are kind of an awareness, because an awareness or a coming to, because most people, the way their lives operate is, especially with as much media and entertainment that we have nowadays. Let's say you are younger than 18 and you're still going to school. Your day is pretty much the same as others. You are going to school for the 8 hours, and then once you come home, you fill up that time somehow, right? Most people go on their phones or their computers. Maybe you have some sort of hobby. I didn't, at least whenever I was that age. I just kind of played around on my computer, hung out in Discord with my friends, and that was really all there was to it. There wasn't really much care of anything outside. And I was a little bit of a late bloomer whenever it comes to any sort of goals, any sort of desires. I find this to be a common thread amongst a lot of the youth today, is this common thread of just a lack of belonging to anything, just kind of existing, if you will, drowning in the bread and circus, especially if their parents or whoever's raising them doesn't really have any sort of discipline on that. That's one of the most important things, if you do have children, to do, is to segregate them from their online media, show them real world things. I find this to be a very big discerning factor between me and other people that I knew, was whether or not their family did things like going camping or some form of religion. They went to church. For me, and like a lot of people I see nowadays, it was everybody lives in their own separate little rooms, does their own little things, and that's just how it is. So with that defined as the asleep, I'm not trying to make this some sort of trite uh, Matrix analogy where everybody's bots and you're like this genius that woke up from the Matrix, and that's not what I'm saying. It's a very generic uh, thing that most people happen. But the thing that separates the few from the majority is that the majority, when they have this awareness, what they usually do, because they're so preoccupied with, again, all that bread and circus and all the other things in life, is they'll just jump on some sort of political ideology. The ones that are uneducated will, whether it's some sort of MAGA thing, whether it's some sort of liberal thing, it doesn't really matter. We can really separate it into two camps that I see. We can separate two parties. We can separate the detached and the ones who care. Now, I would say that to an extent, you could almost draw this as a 50-50. A lot of people don't really care about anything that's going on. They're still in that bread and circus, and they've just kind of, as they've grown older, just kind of culminated some opinions and views and such. And then the ones that care are the ones that are in the variety of different groups, ideologies, etc. You have the political ones, conservative, liberal, libertarian, yada, 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 communist, fascist, whatever you want to label them as. You have the religious, spiritual types. You have the traditional. You have the Christians, the people who declare themselves atheists. You have the Muslims, you have the Buddhists, you have the Eastern people, you have the New Age people, you have the kind of esoteric other outliers, the Jungian types. You see, you can really judge the majority by the people that are popular. So you see people like Jordan Peterson, and you can tell there's a very big influence within that Carl Jung sphere, very prominent nowadays. But needlessly to say, without getting into the weeds, you have those. And then you also have another subcategory of the conspiracy people. And again, a singular person might have a little sprinkle of all of these different categories, the ones that are outside the detached. You have the people who are really it comes from purpose versus people who think there's purpose or are trying to make purpose for themselves versus the people who think there's no point in any of that, so they just kind of detach or they just don't really care. You also have the conspiracy people, you know, the types, the ones that are like, they are doing this, they chemtrails, they are causing the wars, they are controlling the weather, they. And I don't like to discredit them all that often. I find a lot of it can become extremely silly. There is an overarching narrative to a lot of this. You have lots of groups that are intertwined and lots of power at play within that camp. You have the Bilderbergs, you have the WEF organizations, you have the in different intelligence agencies, Mossad, KGB, CIA. You have the Tavistock Institute. You have all these different organizations. You have a surmounting amount of actual evidence. But so there is merit to even that camp. And that's one of the things, is you'll find some nugget of truth within a lot of these camps. But how do you find, why should you care? And if you do care, how do you find truth? That is what I'm going to seek to answer in the next 10 minutes. So the first one, why should you care? Well, I used to not really care, as I mentioned prior. I used to kind of just drown myself in all sorts of vices and different things like that. But I would argue that to an extent, everybody does actually care. Even if you've detached yourself, you think everything's fake and gay, you don't find you find fault in all of these groups, etc. Maybe you have unfortunately been exposed to like 19th century German philosophers and have bought that hook, line, and sinker. Whatever it is, the main thing is everybody does care to an extent. If you didn't, and I guess the ones who have done this are proof that some actually really do not care, but I think they kind of just made an emotional, had an emotional impulse. But you see the ones that actually unalive themselves, and this is kind of the crazy point. When you read certain of these philosophers like Camus, you read a lot of these nihilists. That's what I label all of those, whether they're existentialists, they're the absurdists. It's all nihilism. It's all saying nothing matters, and then they have different solutions that aren't really solutions in themselves. But yeah, this is the real point when we're on this point. We're on this contention is the lack of meaning. Everything's relative. There is no truth. That's an absurd position to have. If you all worldviews to be validated need to be taken to their extreme. And by that, I mean you need to ask yourself, what is the end goal of this worldview? What is the end goal? How far can I take my ideology? How far can I take the solutions to the problems within my ideologies? And when you hold that there is no absolute truth that I can find, you really, people find this to be pretentious or stupid, but it's really not. You need to take that to the farthest and ask yourself how you know that is true. What do I mean by this? It's like, oh man, there's nothing true, bro. How do you know that statement's true if nothing's true? You just made a truth claim, etc. That's how something like that falls apart. There not being meaning. So then you have a spark to gleam through that rubble. A spark of maybe there is truth. Okay? Maybe there is truth. So you take that step and say you're in this nihilist camp, which I made a video the other day about nihilism being the opioid of the masses. Kind of twisted Karl Marx whole thing of like Christianity being the opioid of the masses. But truly it is nihilism. It is the indefinite layers of nihilism that many people have adopted today. But you take a step up from that, and I would say a step up from that is probably like some Viktor Frankl type stuff. Viktor Frankl was the Jewish Holocaust survivor guy who wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning, and he basically says, he who has any why can bear any how, meaning is like what we make it, bro, and like you can have it. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous connotation. It's not really a step up in any regards, but it does get you there. Let's say you adopt some sort of creative pursuit, some sort of goal. You want to lose some weight. You want to anything. I mean, you just put anything within that, any sort of material goal that you could possibly have. To an extent, that does work for a little while, but I find within myself for it to not have much longevity when you really start questioning and you start looking at a plethora of different options. So from that position, where do you go? Okay? You've broken away from like that nihilistic phase, and the nihilistic points can kind of have a large varying degrees, right? I would consider someone who doesn't think about anything spiritual or anything deep at all and just plays video games and doesn't really have much discipline on anything, maybe goes to school or whatever, but no real actual like tangible goal for happiness, just going with the flow of things. I would consider that nihilistic. There is no outside perspective that you seek. But from that, there are many, like I said, you're transitioning from detached to caring. So there are all these plethora of things you can go into. And this is the moment, I think I defined it well enough, where you are malleable. You can be reformed. When you're deep in the trenches of that nihilism, nothing matters, no truth, I don't care about anything, things are fake and gay, and all of that, and you transition, you are not only malleable, but you are at a very, very dangerous spot. It is like, in a large way, that nihilistic, comfort-driven, materialistic ideology can be like a jacket that does keep you warm. But it is a jacket made out of cheap materials that deteriorates very quickly. So once you shed that jacket and you're in that spot of, I would say that is really waking up out of the matrix, is realizing all of that is bullshit. And you can have other degrees. You can have realizing you've been lied to about certain things politically, in your government, in your media is being used. You're being controlled by certain things in your media, etc. All those can be a moment of taking that jacket off, and now you have awoken. I know this gets very what do you want to call it? Kind of stupid, but I would like to further this analogy, so bear with me. You're in a cold wilderness alone, and you have to wander about to find it. And in this wilderness, there are many encampments you might come across very quickly once you are in this malleable state. What are these encampments? These encampments are mirages of meaning. What do I mean by that? Think of certain movements you see that are ridiculous. The BLM, the riot, the whole like let's riot and break shit and anarchy, all of those. These social justice warrior type movements, all of that stuff are those mirages. But on the same flip side of the coin, all of the godless, hedonistic, Andrew Tate, hustle culture, go to the gym until you feel better, movements are the same flip side of that coin. And this is why it's dangerous. They feel warm and inviting. So a lot of people just, when they're in that malleable state, searching for meaning, they jump into them full hook and center. They adopt them. And don't get me wrong, you can leave these movements and these encampments when you're in it. Let's just add some other examples to the mix to really emphasize the point here. In the left, you can have all these like transgender ideologies. All of these, like, you can get into like the communist stuff. You can get into a plethora, right? And then on the same flip side of the coin, you have all sorts of things. You have weird spirals you can get into. You can get into like the pickup artist stuff and all of that weirdness. You can get into the like super extreme Nazi stuff where you are acting like you're based because you worship a government and you still do not have God. Like you still are lacking. So you have all of these different coins, right? Or these two sides to this coin, and they're like mirages. You have the conspiracy camp that you can just adopt as like, that's where I'll find truth. I'll find truth in like all of these searching for they. Spoiler alert. While having lots of merit, while having lots of identifiable organizations that seem to have a lot of control and do a lot of malicious, weird things with a large history behind it, okay, you will never find a full-on truth, because those people who actually control things, they don't put that out in front. Newsflash, that was abolished whenever Julius Caesar was killed for proclaiming himself emperor. From that point on, and you could even, this is kind of more like a poetic explanation for this, but from that point on, right, the real controllers that control the empires are behind the curtains. The only ones that were outside were the Christian monarchs, who were based entirely on the principle of absolute truth. So that's a mirage. What about the religions? Let's try out the religions. What about the Muslims? Well, we can see how they do online in terms of debates and trying to defend their ideology, and how crazy that gets and how contradictory they get. So they're out of the picture. That's another mirage. I'd say they're better than just about all the things I've listed so far, because they actually believe in absolute truth. You have, what about neo-paganism? It's another thing. No basis for a foundation of tradition, clinging into myths and random different things that have no actual canon behind them. So you have that. You have the New Age stuff, which is just a mishmash of everything, which is like a rebranding. It's like you didn't even escape There's No Meaning, right? So you have that. You have the various sects of Christianity, which I recommend Catholicism. This isn't an apology video for Catholicism, so I'm not going to go super deep down that rabbit hole. But what I'm going to, I'm going to try to end this in 3 minutes. In the last 3 minutes is I'm going to give you a map. So you're in this wilderness trying to find it. How do you develop a compass or a map? How do you sift through all of this? How do I form a worldview? First and foremost, you've got to read, and you've got to get out and get into your own shelter for the time being, and get off of the internet. Get off of the sea of interpretations, the sea of of beliefs and different people's lives that you can try to imitate. And you need to form your own view of the world for yourself. You need to read. You need to read essays and articles on what people think. You need to read the ancient books. You need to read all the way from Parmenides and Plato and Aristotle through the church fathers into the Norse pagan myths. Before that even, read Homer and the Greek myths. Read the medieval scholastics. Read the Muslims and the Jews. Read all of these things for yourself. Read the dogmas of the Catholic Church. Read the Enlightenment thinkers, Rousseau, Voltaire, Locke, all of these different people. Read it all. I would say the only ones that I would advise, and the people who believe in this stuff is going to be mad at me, to not read, is the 19th century nihilistic philosophers. Like Nietzsche is the most popular one. People say he's not a nihilist. He has no absolute truth. That's literally the definition of nihilism, is the rejection of absolute truth. That's what we're seeking here, is truth. When someone claims that there is no truth, everything that comes out of their mouth afterwards is but an opinion for you to try to imitate. And that's what we're trying to avoid here. We want concrete truth and canonicity behind the beliefs. Avoid Camus. Avoid all of those people who don't really offer much besides nothing matters. Everything that come before was either wrong or is outdated, and we can't believe it anymore. So going forth, all we have to do is really our own. All we really have is our own orchestrated belief. No, that's not the case, right? That's not the case. A lot of these people try to pedestalize and add a bunch of gems and rubies and pretty objects around these figures. Nietzsche's entire philosophy can be summed up in a sentence or two. It's like, basically what he was saying is the ascetical practices that is preached by Christianity sucks and is destructive. And when people realize this, they're going to become extremely nihilistic and fall into despair. But out of that, some sort of phoenix will arise, a Superman-like figure who will really guide things and have the ultimate morals. And a lot of people nowadays, they try to mix it and blend it with like paganism and all this weird eugenics and stuff like that. It's very strange. But besides the point, the map, the compass, is to read all of these things. And then after you read them for yourself, find what the scholars in each one of them interpret it as. Okay? So for the Bible, this is where people go wrong in Christianity, is they read the Bible alone without realizing there's 2,000 years of writing and apostolic writings on the text and on the beliefs and the tradition, and they think they can interpret it for themselves. And that's what Christianity has been defined as, is we're like just these people of the book. We've just got this book, and that's all we need. It's like the movie The Book of Eli, where he's like this lone prophet defending the Holy Scriptures. Just shows what people think of Christianity nowadays. There's no tradition. All of that's stupid and old. The only thing that matters is the words on the page. No, you need historical interpretation of these things. But it's important for you not to only rely on that. To use your reason. Build your capacity for reason. It's like a lot of these conspiracy things, instead of like finding information and reading all of this stuff, they'll find a Twitter thread, a series of Twitter threads about Jew conspiracies and about all this different stuff, and buy into it without actually reading and sifting through history and different things. On the same coin, there are people who buy into their history they were taught in history class completely and find it blasphemous even to go and look at the alternative media. Myself, I went, and whenever I was seeing all this Israel Jew stuff, I went on there and I read Mein Kampf. I watched a good portion of that 10-hour Europa documentary. And did I buy into it 100%? No. What I found while watching that documentary is they're shooting all these quotes at you like they will, just like how they do in history class. What I would do is I'd pause it and I'd look and see if the quote had any merit. A lot of them didn't have actual historical merit. A lot of them did. Okay? And that's how you need to use your rationalization, is to consume both sides of these things. Accept that there is absolute truth out there. That's the only way you can come to a truth, is to accept that there might be some actual truth that I can find and that I can glean in this life. So you embark with that map of your endpoint, your X marks the spot, is going to be truth. And then you need a compass. You know that truth is in such and such direction, blah, 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 blah. Your compass will be your reason and your rationality to find it. Now, for myself, the Catholic Church is the truth, the absolute truth. But, and this is not to discredit the church in any way, there are many things that the church is not dogmatic about, like geopolitical beliefs. There's no actual dogmatic position on that. It's very much outside the realm of politics. Like, we believe in abortion, but we also believe heavily in social policy. It's kind of not libertarian, but it's not completely conservative, not completely liberal, right? It's a good blend. But it doesn't really teach you on, like, what conspiracy is true and what's false. It doesn't teach you the history of philosophy. It teaches you proper worship of the true God, Jesus Christ. And beyond that, you need to know, how do I find this truth? And it's not a pretty answer. It's not fun. But the true answer is to read. Read a lot. Okay? Too many people nowadays with the internet have access to all these snippets of writings, books, etc., and then access to vocalize their opinion, and you just get millions of people yapping about literal nonsense, about stuff that is taken out of context completely and just lacks all credibility. And these are the people who are teaching the majority. These are the most popular teachers out there of the truth. Uneducated. They're uneducated. Okay? Read for yourself. Find valid interpreters. I've gave several examples in my previous videos of, like, you can find college lectures on this stuff, college interpretations of Homer, of Plato, of all of these people. You can find several theologians who teach the church fathers, teach church history. You can find very credible historians, and you need to read not only the accepted canon, but the media that's outside, and discern for yourself. It's lazy. That's the main problem, is laziness and over-reliance on individuals, right? We're supposed to be a collective. This is another lie of of modernity, is this idea of individualism and liberty, as like it kind of comes from that Ubermensch-esque figure that a genius will rise and liberate and contribute so much to society that we just take another leap forward in progress by whatever relative means, that whatever that even means, right? We're taking another step forward. What's the step forward? Well, people are a lot less happy, but I know. We're gonna go to another planet. That's like the pillar of progress, is traveling in space. But the spiritual aspects, that doesn't really matter. That comes secondary to flying a hunk of metal to a rock. But anyway, that's truly how you will liberate yourself. I've done lecture video on the liberal arts, the original education. Our education system has been completely corrupted. All of these different things. And, nobody can find teachers because there aren't any, because even most of the teachers don't read. It's just this endless pyramid scheme of quote minds and, like, reading a handful of books and thinking they know everything, and then just forming their ideology and informing others on how to think based off of a super weird position, like Andrew Tate, like these figures. So anyway, read. That's really, you could boil this whole video down to, there is truth. read to find it, use your reasoning, and even if you don't believe in God, pray. Pray to find the truth. Our God is a merciful one, and mercy, in the Hebrew word rahim, right? It doesn't mean that God's evil and he wants to punish you and you're asking him, please don't punish me. That word rach in the Hebrew means womb. This was biblical mercy, right? Womb. So when you think about that, what does that mean? What is a womb? It's a protection. It is an encompassing protection and provision. When you're in the womb, you have an umbilical cord, and you're fed through your mother, right? Now, God's not androgynous. He's not a woman or anything like that. But for an analogy, this is how you can think of God's mercy. He wants to shine it down on you. Doesn't mean you're going to be a billionaire. This isn't a prosperity gospel. But mercy is not mercy from punishment entirely. It is mercy in that Hebrew sense of the word of hold me, Lord. Be generous with me. And it's not always with material possessions. Sometimes it's with the truth. Sometimes it's mercy is discovering something so you don't spend 20 years wrapped up in a wrong ideology or in some cult or anything like that. So, yeah. Anyways, if you want a couple of things, I would recommend read the Bible for one, then look at the church fathers' interpretation of that. Read the ancient Greeks. Read some of the Romans. Neoplatonism is pretty entertaining. Read all these different things. Read Father Seraphim Rose's book, short essay. It's like less than 100 pages. Book called Nihilism, Revolution, as the root of it. And yeah, find truth. It is out there. I would tell you that it is in the Catholic Church. But outside of that, you do have several things that you have to form on your own as well. Because while being 90% of the whole pie, there's still a 10% that is left up to you to decide on what you believe. And yeah, peace out, boys.